The March 9th, 2021 meeting of the Carlton School District Board of Directors is called to order. Mr. Bealey, would you want to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under
God,
indivisible,
with liberty, justice for all.
Thanks, Keith. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Apple.
Here.
Director Frank.
Here.
Director Honchar.
Here.
I believe he's here remotely.
Director Mendoza.
Here.
Director O'Brien.
Here.
Director Pushkar.
Here.
Director Simsek.
She's not here tonight.
Director Zaletsky.
Here.
And Director Shriver.
Here. There's a time at the beginning of each meeting where we invite the public to address or ask questions about anything on our agenda for the evening. Does anyone in the audience or online have any questions for agenda items? I see no from the audience. And Mr. Jones, anything online? Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
And real quick, Mr. Jones, could you let us know how many people are joining us on Zoom and then potentially through YouTube? Very good. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no comments on agenda items, we will move on. Turning to our reports. Finance Committee report. Dr. Carter, do you want to?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Shriver. We do have we have two reports. We have our finance report from Mr. Bilby, who will lead us through that report. Go ahead, Mr. Bilby. If your microphone's working.
Josh, you have my presentation? Yeah. Good evening, everyone. How is everyone tonight? Tonight, I'm just going to briefly go over a couple items that we've discussed at the previous finance meetings. We're going to go over the financials real quick of where we are year to date. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about PSERS and the effect of PSERS on our budget. And finally, I'm just going to go through some updates and items that we will be coming to you as a board in the next few finance meetings. So let's go ahead and start, Josh, for the first screen. Okay. All right. Currently today, as you note, our revenues right now are still coming in pretty steady. As we discussed at the last finance meeting, our taxes, especially our real estate taxes, have come in pretty strongly. We have actually exceeded our revenue amounts that we expected, and we budgeted for that period. But I do want to remember is that, those were, the collection rates were amended due to COVID. So even though we are showing that we're up on our real estate, we're still pretty comparable for what we were in previous years. And so it's not something that, we want to look to say, okay, we have a pretty big windfall there, but it's just something that I just want you to be aware of. And if you look, delinquent taxes are still low, but right now with the collection time of taxes being over, now we're going to start seeing our delinquent taxes coming in over the next couple months. So you'll start seeing an increase in those. The other big thing that I wanted to show you is like the state grants and the federal grants. As you see, those have increased quite a bit over the last month too. And what that is, it's a direct reflection of the COVID grants that we have received from the state and the federal government. With a lot of these grants, what we're required to do is we go out, we get the grants, but we have to actually spend it before they'll send us the actual money. So it's a process of, as you see here, we've actually exceeded our state grants, the budget on that. It's because we have taken our ESSER grants and our other grants, and we start closing out those grants just to get the money flowing back into the district. So They are over what the budget states because there's a lot of grants that, are coming out daily, weekly that we are not aware of, and we're going to apply for everything that we can. So right now, looking at our revenues to date through February 28th, we're at 80% of our revenue. So right now, the revenues are looking pretty good. If you want to go to the next slide, Josh. So this is the slide I showed you last finance meeting, basically showing our two biggest real estate and earned income. These are the two that we felt that we needed to keep an eye on because of COVID. And these two were also the two that we adjusted our collection rates. So as you can see, the real estate, we are at 104% of our budget. Last year, we collected 101% of our budget. So what that tells us is that, there's a possibility over the next year that we can raise our collection rate a little bit from what we've had for this period here. And then the earned income, it was a little low last period, but it seemed to have rebounded. We had a nice collection in February. So right now we're at 59% of our budget. Last year at this time, we were 53%. So right now it looks like everything is flowing the way that we expect it to, and will continue to go for the rest of the period. Josh. And now with the expenditures, everything still is tracking at a normal pace. There's nothing really of concern that we have to watch for. We're maintaining right about a 52% of our usage of our budget. But of course, the salaries and benefits will continue to rise continue to be allocated against the expenditure as the months go. And with the adoption of the extension and the agreement of the SCA, you're also going to see a spike where we're going to take and apply the back wages to all of those involved in those. So you're going to see that budget, part of the budget, probably next month going up a little bit, so an increase there. And right now, believe it or not, we're 2.5 months left in school, a little bit more. And so being at 52%, it looks pretty good. Like I said, right now there's nothing that I really am too concerned as far as with the expenditures of that's going to throw us for, the very end, say, oh boy, what happened? We're all of a sudden out over budget. So that's just basically real quick and dirty, the revenues and the expenditures current to month. And like I said, everything is trending very well right now with those. So the next one is the last finance meeting. There was a little bit of discussion about PSERS, and PSERS, which is the Public School Employees Retirement System. It's hard to really understand the scope of it by just talking about it. So what next couple screens, what I did is I actually took 10, 15 years and kind of graphed it out for you so that you can see, what we've been dealing with in school districts and basically what is the effect of it on our budgets. So Josh, if you want to go to the next one, thanks. So if you look at the historical data, if you look at going back to 2009 and 10, the PSER rate was only at 4.76%. Wow. So basically what that means is 4.76% of every dollar that was spent on salaries was going to PSERS. So as you can see, it has increased steadily year to year to year to year. And we've gotten up to now where we currently are at 34.51. As you see, that line is starting to steady out a little bit. So we're not having the increases that we're used to seeing. So, but 34.51 is high. So look at the difference. We were at 4.7, we're now at 35. So 31% is increased over 10 years. The projected is going out. I have it just projected out to 23, 24 of 36%, but it's supposed to not going to peak until 2027, 28, and it's going to peak at 38.17. So if everything stays the way that it's supposed to, once we hit that peak of 38.17, it's going to stay there for about 20 years before anything. So long after we're all gone from, dealing with the PSERS issue, it's going to be around. So it's something that's not going to go away. It's there. So that's just a quick show of what the rates have done over the years. Any questions on those?
So Keith, you say it's projected to go up to 30.
38.17 by 27, 28.
And then sometime around 2037, 2038, it's going to start
It's
coming
gonna
down.
start gradually going back down, but
It's not going to be back down to 5%
no, it
right
never
away.
will. And one of the things that where a lot of us are skeptical that 3817 is actually going to last is because PSERS has tried to take steps to try to loosen the burden of the retirees by offering different programs, 401ks or different, hybrid type of retirement programs.
Mhm.
But what that really does is it's actually taking people out of the
Right.
PSERS system that
Right.
is supposed to be paying for
Right.
the program itself. So it's kind of, you don't know. I mean, they're trying to do all kinds of different types of reform on it, but everything that has ever gone to legislation to try to pay it off, the debt with a bond from the state or different types of trying to move money from the state government, it's always failed. So I don't foresee it going anywhere. I mean, we're just going to have to, accept that this is what the PSERS rate is. This is the rate that we're going to pay on every salary dollar that we pay from this point on. So that's basically in a nutshell. I mean, our dilemma right there is that. So
Keith, it's George. Can you
Yes,
hear
George.
me?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, I have a question. My retirement accounts are booming the last 4 years. Why isn't PSERS booming in this economy?
I believe from what I've heard, and don't quote me on this, but back in the days when the economy really took a hit, just prior to that, PSERS was doing very well and they were booming. So they gave a cut to the districts, which then caused really no money to flow into it. So what they were basically doing is they were using the reserves. The economy went down and it hit that program as hard as it did with a lot of other people that lost their retirement programs. So basically, what's happening is we're trying to they're trying to recover from that downside that we had. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, everything is going very well right now, but that's the issue that they're running into right now is that they're trying to pay past that down, and it exceeds right now where we are. So that's why they have to keep raising it.
Keith, question one, was there mismanagement in those days? And question two, was anybody ever punished if there was mismanagement in those years?
I honestly don't know. I know that there was talks that there was reports of how it was handled, but I've never seen where anything has ever happened to anyone that has made the plans or set the rates. It's just one of those things that if I came into the school district probably right around that 2009, maybe a little bit earlier, when the PSERS rates were lower, but I heard, so I can't give you a firsthand answer to that. I can look into data to see if there is anything.
Hey, Keith, do you have any idea how sensitive these rates are to so part of the reason it's so elevated, right, is because there's lost time in the past that we're trying to make up, which means we have to over collect now.
Correct.
A lot over collect
Right.
to make up the difference.
Right.
I assume there's some risk in those numbers, but what I'm worried about is how sensitive that is to another recession in the future, right? So if we have another recession in the next 5-6 years, is that accounted for in those numbers, or does that either belong it or could they go?
No, I think that they do put some risk in there because I believe 2009 was probably our last recession. Is that correct? And that's probably when the rates started to go up. Right now, we had that slight little decline a couple years ago, and they were able to adjust it so that they weren't having to raise it. There was talks that they were going to have to raise it, but they were able to manipulate the money around. So I believe that there is a risk analysis, because they don't want to see what happened back in 2009 happen again, because it would be critical. I mean, they really could not sustain it, another big hit like that, because it's getting to the point where a district our size, you'll see in a few minutes of what it's costing us, but think about the bigger districts, the Pittsburghs, the Harrisburgs, that the amount of money that they're paying out, it's just not sustainable for school districts to do it. So, I mean, there's two parts of it, and there's a part that's there's an administrative part that we have to pay, and then there's the part that's actually paying out the retirement. So, and one thing that they have not changed at all is the rate that the employees paid has always been consistent year to year. So that's one thing that they haven't looked at raising at all.
Jude, if I could add a comment to your question. I looked at it in depth a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And from what I recall, in the 09, 10, 11 timeframe, they were about $50 billion underfunded. And they finally bit the bullet and said, okay, we've got to change the rates. And they put in a schedule roughly like what we see now. When the markets did well in the late teens, they were trumpeting their performance and they were glad. And so that allowed them to tweak it a little bit. But basically it delayed getting to 35 by 2 or 3 years. It wasn't a wholesale change that really dramatically affected the curve. So I think based on what we've seen, their plan is to get it up into the mid to high 30s, keep it there for 15 or 20 years, and then let it slowly trickle back down. And they adjust a little bit based on market performance and other factors. But it would be at risk if there was another massive recession. Yeah.
I mean, one thing that sticks out to me when you look at this is as we're peaking on the PSERS rate in the high 30s, we're also peaking in the number in our salaries. We're at a maximum number of people that are over the jump step. So it's
Right.
peak rate applied against peak cost.
Right. It really is. I was going to say that in a slide or two, that it's a double-edged sword for us. I mean, it really is, because as our salaries go up, and you're right, and as the jump steps happen and people move more senior, throughout all of the unions, we can't control the PSERS rate, but in the salaries too. I mean, we're contractually obligated to those, but you're right. I mean, as those salaries continue to rise year to year, unfortunately, the PSERS rate is going up with it. So our expense is going up. And in the next slide, and Josh, you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. You're going to see, I mean, we do get some money back from the state. So if you look in the blue is what our expense has been. So this is our actual expense for Carlington from 2011, where our cost was $845,362. Jump that up to currently, we're at the budget, we're at $4.3 million. So you're jumping from 4.3 million, or from 845,000 up to that 4.3. The orange is showing what we're getting back from the state. It's typically 50%, might be 51, depending on, what the rates are at those times. But the majority of it, the average is 50%. So you're seeing how that's, correlating is that, that gap between where the orange stops and that blue is our expense.
Mhm.
And if you want to go to the next slide, Josh, I can show you. This is our net expense. So this is exactly what we are responsible after you take out what the reimbursement comes back. So, we can say, yes, we're getting some money back, but 2010-11, our cost was $285,000. That was our net cost. You go up to where we are today, we're at $2.1 million. And it's just going to continue to rise. I mean, I projected it out to 2023-24 at $2.4 million. And that's based on just increasing salaries by 2.7%, just for effect. But it's a big cost. It really is a big cost. And, back to that double-edged sword. I mean, as our salaries go, that number is going to go up. So yes, we are getting some money back from the state, but it's not enough by far to be able to, help us at all, really. So that's just a real quick. I mean, it really does. I mean, it tells a lot looking at these. I mean, it really does. And when you look at how much.
So really, I mean, just a quick calculation. This is anywhere between 7-8% of
70% of our budget.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just goes to
just goes to Piecers.
Pension
and it's just,
expense, yeah.
It's just right out the door. That's right.
And
And it's not only just on our salaries, but I mean, it's on the substitutes, it's on our
Right.
coaches, it's on, I mean, anything that we pay for salary out in
Yeah.
the district, we have to pay Piecers on.
so I wonder what that percentage was back in 2010, 2011.
That'd be interesting. And
Yeah, I mean, our
can get
budget
that.
wasn't what it was. I mean, but it was still probably 19, 20 million back then.
Yeah,
I can't
okay.
remember.
That'd be interesting to see. And
Yeah.
that's a thing that we can, definitely, I can look into that and, just, throw it out to you just to show you that, where are we as in comparison to years before. But that's a dilemma that we face when we do this budget. I mean, it's one of those things that
Yeah.
it's going to continually to rise. We know that we have to keep that always in our mind when we're projecting and when we're budgeting. And, that's really, something that's, unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with every year or so. So that's what I have on Piecers. Any other questions? It was just a quick, show you, what has happened over the years and how it affects us. So, all right, Josh, if you want to jump to the next. So basically what I wanted to tell you is in the upcoming board meetings, my plans are right now, and we can tweak this. I'll talk with everybody. We'll get up a true timeline to make sure that we have everything. But I plan on coming to you on April 13th with the revenue budget pretty much to the point where I'm pretty confident that it'll be completed so that we'll be able to get a really good idea of where we are for next year's revenue budget. So we'll review the district's revenue budget on April 13th. May 11th, we'll look at the district expenditures and the proposed preliminary budget. And what that does is it leaves us that board meeting in the middle of April so that if we feel that we need to have another presentation or we want to talk a little bit more, then we can have that open to be able to do another presentation. May 18th at the actual board meeting, we'll approve that proposed final budget. That does give us the 30 days that is necessary to post it and to have it approved at the June 22nd board meeting. And then on the June 8th, I mean, we can also look at it also, I could do a presentation on that day of what the final budget looks like. When we come to you with a proposed final budget, it's pretty much going to be 90%, 95% done what the budget's going to look like. But we're still going to tweak it, and we're going to tweak it until that last minute to make sure that we have it as accurate as possible. So that right now is what I'm hoping to be able to come to you with, for each of those days. I'm open for any, opinions on what you guys think. If you want us to do more, we can do more. If you think that's too much, just let me know. And like I said at the last finance meeting, if there's topics that you want me to go through, kind of like with the Piecers, just let me do it. Go through it, and we'll just go through everything. So that's everything I have for tonight. Any
Just
other
a quick
questions,
comment.
concerns?
Just a quick comment. I like the Piecers Preza. So I think if you can bring those kind of little snippets to help kind of educate us on the various pieces of our finances, that would be great.
And like I said, I'm more than willing to do that. I know there are some new board members, and even for those that have been on the board for a while, as you know, with government, everything changes. So, yeah, absolutely. If you want anybody on the board wants to just throw out a topic, and I can do a little snippet on it, and that'll be great. That'll be fine. Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bealby.
You're welcome.
For the superintendent's report, I wanted to provide a little bit of information on where we are with the recent information that's been shared with our community with vaccination plan that has come across from Governor Wolf. So Mr. Jones, if you could switch to the next slide, please. As previously shared, there is an educator vaccination plan that Governor Wolf put together for educators across the state of Pennsylvania. And just so it's clear in regard to how an educator is defined, it's a very broad definition. It's more or less any employee who works in any capacity with our students. So that includes anywhere from teachers to cafeteria to maintenance to custodial to administration, playground aides, bus drivers, Anybody in those categories who would have access to our children also have access now to the vaccination program being sponsored across the state. The vaccine that is being made available to our employees is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's a one-shot administration, and that administration is being rolled out in 2 separate phases. So the first phase will occur this week. Arlington was identified with 72 spots that we could take up. So we used up all of our 72. And the goal with going out in phase 1 was to work with any teachers or any staff members who have contact with elementary age students, special education students, or English language learning students. That was the priority. So when we went through our roster, our teachers and staff members went through and filled out their desire to receive the vaccine. We were able to go through our list, and we were able to work our way through. So anybody that steps foot in any of our elementary buildings and was interested in getting the vaccine was given a time to schedule for that vaccine. So we hit our entire elementary, and then we were also able to slowly work our way up through the junior, senior high school and hit some of our teachers who work at the middle level with 7th and 8th grade. And I think we actually even got to one teacher that works at the senior high level. We were able to pick up one of our transportation personnel who provides transportation for our special needs students. In all, Allegheny County was issued 7,400 vaccines of the Johnson & Johnson that will go out in phase 1. And from what we understand from the state is that at the end of the month, any other educator who wants to receive the vaccine will have the opportunity to do that. Anything of this nature, as you can imagine, just across Allegheny County, it's a huge lift across the state of Pennsylvania. It's a huge lift working with several different agencies, including the AIU, Department of Health, AMI, who is the medical vendor, and then PAIS, who is the technology vendor to help out with the online registration for our staff. So it's the coordinated efforts there. Certainly there's going to be some information that we shared out with individuals that will change and move a little bit. But it looks like it's starting to be a little bit more consistent. The links for that vaccination should go out, I'm guessing, by tomorrow, because the vaccines then start being administered on Thursday. The AIU did a really nice job at setting up their clinic, and most of the time slots that are available are after school hours. So we should not have many employees who need to take time off to go get the vaccine. It's also unclear with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine what the side effects are of that vaccine and how that will have an impact a day or two after individuals get their vaccine. But that's something that we will work very closely with all of our employees to make sure that we can manage, help understand what some of those side effects are, and see if we need to do anything in particular to work our way through. But at this time, we don't see any altercations to our schedule as far as moving forward. We still plan to continue in-face and in-person instruction while the vaccines are being rolled out. The next slide, there's some information coming out from the federal government in regard to vaccine development for school-age students at the elementary level and also at the secondary level. From what we understand, the most current research is they are taking a look at that research. They are going through some trial vaccinations with younger students. And at this time, they are projecting that in the fall would be the earliest that they would have any type of vaccine available for children and also for our secondary students. Once those vaccines go through and get approved, then it's very similar to what we just recently experienced with the vaccination program. And that's just availability and distribution and supply chain of getting out those vaccinations to the correct spaces. So we'll look to follow that and determine how that vaccination program will have an impact on our students as we move forward. Next slide talks about the Allegheny County. Previously, what we shared was that Allegheny County was in the substantial range for COVID, which talks about the spread of the virus in the community. And because we were in that substantial spread area, we had to sign that attestation form back in late November. Since we moved to moderate, and by moving into moderate, what that simply means is the positivity rate is below 10% and the incident rate is below 100 per 100,000 people in the community. So Both of those numbers have worked their way down underneath that 10% and underneath that 100 to put us into that moderate range. So therefore, school districts in Allegheny County are no longer required to follow the mandates set out by the attestation form, which, if you'll recall, as we go through and we monitor each of our cases, once we hit the threshold of 2 individuals at our elementary schools or 4 individuals at our junior, senior high school, we were required to shut down that facility for anywhere between 3 and 7 days. Where we did have one incident earlier this year where we did have to take that action, and we also took some preventative type of action by closing schools on the weekend and going through and doing cleaning so that we could reset our window, the 14-day rolling average window, so that we could keep our schools open. It is our goal to continue to keep in-person instruction open to our students because we recognize the value of students being in the classroom with our teachers, learning in a face-to-face environment. So as far as moving forward, we do continue to monitor each of our cases. We continue to report those out. We continue with the e-blasts each time we get a case, provide that information to our community, and continue to update our online access to total number of cases. And then nationally, we continue to work with the Allegheny County Health Department as we get more cases in. We continue to solicit their advice on quarantining and different types of steps that we can do to make our buildings safer for our children and for our staff. The next slide does provide a little bit of information into where we currently are in regard to number of cases. We currently have 4 active cases in the district. One of those cases is a non-instructional staff member, and the other 3 are students. I believe 2 are at the elementary level, and 1 is at the junior, senior high school level. We have 29 students in quarantine, and then 3 staff members are in quarantine. So just as a reminder, you know, in the lower right-hand corner, there's the online graph. That information is updated for positive cases on a daily basis. For quarantine, we've been updating that probably twice a week just to give information on that. When we do get a positive case in the schoolhouse, just as a reminder, our school officials and our nurses and personnel work very closely with our staff. Our staff does a tremendous job at keeping accurate seating charts and recording where students are seated on specific days, when students are absent, when students are learning remotely, so that we can go into the classroom, take a look to find out where the child who tested positive was. And then we go through and we make sure we measure the 6-foot radius distance. And then we work very closely with those teachers to determine whether or not a child has been exposed to another child for a period greater than 15 minutes at less than 6 feet. That system has been working very well for us. We have not noticed any in-school spread of the virus based on the precautions that we've been taking in the school. And that's been tremendous effort by across the board, all of our staff members who take part in working with our children, take part in cleaning our facility and keeping things safe and keeping the airflow moving and all that, all the benefits of trying to prepare for the mitigation of the virus. On the next page, again, just reiterates how we continue to work with our health and safety plan, regardless of the number of our employees who are going through and getting the vaccination, regardless of additional spread of the virus. The cumulative numbers of the spread of the virus are starting to approach that herd. We're not there yet, certainly by any means. However, regardless of all those, we continue to make sure that our health and safety plan is being implemented fully. We still screen our students as they come in through the doors by taking temperatures. We continue to ask our parents to check the health and well-being of their children before they're sent to school. At any time, if they're feeling ill, we ask parents to keep their child at home and communicate with the school and participate in remote learning. While they're in the building, we practice as much social distancing and physical distancing as possible. As you can recognize, when a student does test positive, we do have to quarantine some students. So there are areas of our building where students are spending more than 15 minutes of time at less than 6 feet. But that is something that we shared prior to moving forward and opening our doors to in-person instruction. But we do try to maximize that. We have very good distances in our elementary schools. It really hits class by class, depending on where students are for real specific types of classes. Masking and barriers, we continue to wear masks in the schoolhouse. We continue to use the barriers put up in all of our cafeterias using plexiglass to separate our students and even staff members in our break rooms as well.
And then just basic hygiene and cleaning is the encouragement of washing hands, using hand sanitizer, and other regular checks of basic hygiene. So that's where we are basically from a state of, from the COVID aspect. One final slide that I wanted to put in just to supplement as far as the Finance Committee meeting component of things is Governor Wolf's budget that recently came out. This is one small portion of the budget. We are very thankful that the budget that he is proposing is very educational friendly, that there are a lot of changes in his budget that will provide districts with additional funding, and using fair funding formulas, which at our next Finance Committee meeting, we will be joined by a member of PSBA who will share some information about the fair funding formula for us, just to push that out to the community and also to our board to provide some updates. But one piece I wanted to focus in on this evening is how the governor's budget will address charter school reform. And charter school reform is something that's been on the state's agenda for several years, and has finally started to gain some traction and some bipartisan support, because I believe both parties have recognized the impact that charter school tuition has had on local school districts. It's a significant expense for districts that have a large number of students who attend cyber charters. One thing a lot of people don't recognize is that from one school district to another, is that tuition rates vary. It's a complex formula that's designed that takes into account the district's overall operating budget and takes into consideration some other key components of the operating budget as well, to determine what that fee is for a student to attend a cyber charter school. So the fees range anywhere from $9,000 to $22,000. I've actually seen some up in the $30,000 range as well per student that attend cyber charters, and also regular brick and mortar charter schools as well. So as you can recognize, in a district of our size, when we have several students who attend charter schools, that it's another significant part of our budget to send students off to charter schools. We've ranged in the area of anywhere between $1.2 and $1.7 million per year that we send out to charter schools. So a part that the governor's budget is proposing for the charter reform has to do with setting a flat rate for tuition, which would bring a flat rate across the board to $9,500, which for us at Farlington, that would have a positive impact on our operating budget, just based on the amount of money that we spend to send students out to the charters. In addition to that, the governor proposes taking a look at the special education formula. And currently, through the special education funding that we get from the state, it's done in the 4 tiers in regard to special education. We receive more money for children with more significant disabilities than for children with less significant disabilities. And it's put into 4 different tiers. However, when that formula is applied to charter schools, the tiering system is taken out, and it's just not a simple formula, it's a more complex formula to determine that cost overall. So looking to clean that component up of using the special education formula, putting in those tiers, which will also help significantly with the cost of sending students off to charter schools as well. And then in the process of paying bills and sending money off to charter schools, in some cases there's disputes over how long a child has been attending that school, whether or not they needed special education services. So it opens up that dispute between the public school district and the charter school to determine what the correct amount of money is that we need to send them as a bill. We're required to pay that bill and then dispute it later. And that dispute process quite often can be a bit cumbersome. And in the process, the redirection process is what the governor is proposing of cleaning up and making it a little bit more, put some fairness into it, some accountability and some transparency into how that's handled and processed at the district level and working with charter schools. That's one component. There are many components to the governor's budget that he is proposing. His overall budget will be a heavy lift to get all components through and approved. However, from what we see, we do see some encouragement with the charter school reform. As I mentioned, from both sides of the aisle there, it looks like it's gaining some traction, and
should have some impact on our operating costs here at the district level. Any questions from the board in regard to COVID or with the charter reform?
I have one question, John, just to clarify. So on the slide with the charter school, so when you talked about the formula is based on what it costs us to educate students. So if a cyber charter, if their costs are say $5,000 or $6,000, what we pay that charter school for the student from our district is based on our formula. So if our formula says $15,000, even though it costs that cyber school $5,000 to $6,000 to educate the kid, we're paying them the $16,000 or whatever our formula says.
Correct. We would pay, basically what you're doing is you're paying an overage to
Sure.
them. You're paying them more than what it truly costs to educate that child. Our school district, along with many other school districts across the state of Pennsylvania, also offer additional services, additional programs that our charter schools simply do not do. For example, with clubs, activities, different types of programs in the classroom itself, athletics, a lot of different programs that are available to our public that we open up to our public for public dollars as far as where their tax money goes. So you're right on target there. As when you look at it, if it costs them $5,000, but the formula says we send them 16, they're making 11,000 in the process there, and that's the inequity. And it's using an old formula that is pretty much out of date, and so that's why they're looking to upgrade it. So that's very insightful. Thank you.
So, John, and the other point is that we're not exactly comparing apples to apples here either, because for the most part, charter schools, am I correct in saying that they're not judged by the same standards that traditional public schools are? And the vast majority of especially the cyber charter schools have been found to be wanting in terms of quality of education.
Yeah, there's certainly some inequities out there in regard to different criteria that the charter schools are held to compared to the public schools here. There are some disparities between student performance with standardized testing, Keystone exams, ACTs, SATs. You can look and find some different research on this that will show. Certainly, there are some charter schools out there that are outperforming some public schools. I think when you look nationwide, they will find some charter schools that are doing very well, and they're more or less magnet schools that are attracting or are specifically designed for students who are interested in certain career paths. Some of those schools do very well, but when you look at the overall numbers, and I think when you take a look at what the Carlinton School District provides to our graduates, I stand very strongly behind the Carlinton diploma, that when a student walks across our stage at the end of the school year as a senior and they get that Carlinton diploma, it means a lot more than what it would be to get their diploma from some of the charters and some of the cyber charters in our area. That our diploma carries weight. Our diploma has that standard of excellence. It has that signature that says that our students have worked very hard for a period of 4 years in their high school to get that diploma. And we feel that when they exit Carlinton School District, that they're ready to either directly enter the workforce, enter the military, or move on to post-secondary to further their education.
John, last year, I think we had 9 students in the Carlinton Cyber Academy. How many do we have this year?
At this time, Mr. Honchar, we have 10 students that are in the Carlinton Cyber Charter Academy. Not the Cyber Charter, the Cyber Academy. We have 10 students. So we did increase that number a little bit. And we do look to strategically use that to keep our students. And there was some language out there also previously in proposals that if districts offer their own cyber academy, that they be required to stay. But I don't think that provision is put into this proposal.
John, The second question is, in this charter school reform, is there going to be testing of their kids comparable to the testing of our kids that our kids are given?
That's a piece I'm not sure. I don't think that information is contained in the budget proposal that he put out.
I think the feds are the ones talking about that.
What's that?
I think the federal government's the ones talking about that.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that's, as far as testing goes, testing comes out from the federal through the ESSA. Federal legislation pushes it down to the state to issue the exams. So I don't think any of that information is in the proposed budget.
Okay.
But I can
Thank
check
you.
if there's any reform in that area as well. Any other questions from board members? Any questions from anywhere else? Go ahead.
All right, so I have a quick question. I've talked about so I have a quick question. So the students enrolled here aren't going to get their vaccine until the fall. That's like what we covered already.
Yeah.
So how are the seniors supposed to get them, go about getting their vaccine? We're not educated on how to do it. So I didn't know if that was like covered or if that's just something we'll have to do on our own.
Yeah, so the vaccine program that's currently out there right now is for educators. It's not set up for students. And as far as the vaccine information that has been shared with just community members at large, currently we're in the 1A stage, which is designed for individuals over 65, 75, those with pre-existing conditions, those who are obese, those who, a lot of different criteria can go through the 1A. So from what I've seen, there's been much more availability of the vaccines in the past couple days. There was a lag there over the past few weeks. So I think it is as soon as the federal government and the state rolls out programs for youth and young adults, I think that's when you'll start to see some changes.
Rodrigo, I think the issue with students in the fall is that the vaccines are currently only approved for ages 16 and up. So I think if the availability is what we expect, you should be seeing a vaccine this summer, but the younger students may not see something till this fall. Yep.
That's all I have for superintendent's report. And that's the final administrative report of the evening.
Thank you. We'll move on then to the rest of our agenda. In section 3, I'll entertain a motion to approve the third amendment to the real estate purchase and sale agreement between the district and Armstrong Redevelopment LLC. Do I have a motion for that item?
So moved.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Under section 4, personnel, there's 2 items. I'll entertain a motion to approve number 1, the additions to the 2020-2021 supplemental athletic list with new and returning coaches. The stipend for supplemental position holders will be prorated in the event of a shortened or canceled season due to unforeseen circumstances. And then number 2, the 1-year extension to the Carleton Federation of Teachers contract through June 30th of 2021. Do I have a motion for those 2 items?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay on 4.2 for Marisa.
Nay on point 2 from Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Jumping down to old business. Any director have any old business they wish to share?
Jim, this is Bill Andrews, and I don't have any old business, but I'd like to remind you to announce our executive session that we had tonight to discuss real estate personnel, and negotiations.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Bill, does your statement suffice, or should I reiterate your statement?
I think if Michelle will just note that in the record, that will suffice.
I agree. All right, thank you. Michelle, you're good? All right, thanks. Any other old business from any director? Nope. New business. Anybody have any new business they'd like to bring up? If not, open forum. Does anybody in the audience have any open forum questions? No. Either in person, no, or online? Nope. Any board member have any open forum questions? No. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Real quick, Director Apple, this is Sarah Hoffman. I just want to put out a reminder that on Thursday, the 11th of this month at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a mental health forum online via Zoom, and anyone that would like to participate can log on to the website and join there.
Thank you for the reminder. That's great.
Thank you.
Any other updates? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thanks.
Night, everyone.